Welcome to our YouTube channel, In Our Basement. My name is Niels.
And I'm Gayle. We're going to be having conversations and share our thoughts about things that we're really passionate about.
And just before we get started, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
And if you like the content, then feel free to share it on your social media platform.
All right. Thank you for joining us for another episode of
In Our Basement.
And to get it started, because I know that we're just laughing and making jokes here as we start, is I want to ask you some questions that are like brain teasers that may or may not actually have a serious answer after it, but it's just to get your brain going for fun. Okay? Here we go, Gayle. So
is it like teasing, like you're gonna be like, haha?
Well, you'll just have to play along to see.
Like flirtatious.
Okay. There are 3 houses. One is red, one is blue, and one is white. If the red house is to the left of the house in the middle, and the blue house is to the right to the house in the middle, where is the white house?
In the middle. Okay, wait.
Yeah, you got. Well, it's kind of in the middle. It's actually in Washington, D.C. Okay. You are in a cabin, and it is pitch black. You have one match on you. Which do you light first? The newspaper, the lamp, the candle, or the fire?
Well, the fire is what... Well, you gotta... Or you light the match to get the fire.
Yeah, you got it. You light the match first. Oh, that was good. That was good. Okay. Mike is a butcher.
Ruffo.
Oh, Mike. Oh, I see what you did there. Go on. Okay.
Yeah, that's how cool I am.
Okay, Mike is a butcher. He is 5 feet 10 inches tall. What does he weigh?
Mike is a butcher. He's 5'10".
Yeah, what does he weigh?
Well, I don't know.
The meat. He's a butcher. Okay. Jimmy's mother had 4 children. She named the first Monday, she named the second Tuesday, and she named the third Wednesday. What is the 4th child?
Jimmy.
Oh, you got it. That was good. Okay. Okay. Which is heavier?
I'm really impressed with myself.
Yeah, no, you're doing...
I've only one that I've, know.
No, you're doing really good. Okay. Which is heavier? A pound of feathers or a pound of rocks?
Well, they're the same.
Good answer. Good job. Duh. Okay.
These are pretty easy brain teasers.
You'll see. Okay. You are driving a bus. At the first stop, 2 women get on. The second stop, 3 men get on and 1 woman gets off. At the third stop, 3 kids and their mom get on and a man gets off. The bus is gray and it is raining outside. What color is the bus driver's hair?
Well, I don't know. Did you say that?
I did, yeah.
Oh, wait. Start again. Well, that's just going to give it away.
Yeah, well, okay. You're driving a bus. At first stop, 2 women get on. The second stop, 3 men get on and 1 woman gets off. At the third stop, 3 kids and their mom get on and a man gets off. The bus is gray and it is raining outside. What color is the bus driver's hair?
Well, the bus is gray, but you didn't say...
No, I said you're the bus driver.
Oh, I didn't hear the your.
I did. Sorry. I started off saying you are driving a bus. Oh, gotcha. So no.
Okay, that's 2.
That's 2. They're not as easy as you think, but I mean. Okay. What can you hold without ever touching or using your hands?
What can I hold?
Yeah.
I could hold anything with my feet. I can hold my breath.
Yeah, there you go. As I started holding my breath. Okay, what did you think of those?
Well, because you kind of gave it away when you're like...
Well, babe, you just, you take my breath away.
Oh, isn't he sweet?
So, what did you think of those? Those are kind of fun, hey? Just some brain teasers.
Yeah. I was like, oh no, is he going to make me do math or something like that?
No.
Because I didn't do the greatest in math in school.
That's okay. Well,
But I got 1 + 1.
You and me?
Yeah.
1 + 1 still equals 1. Does the 2 become 1? We covered that in a previous podcast.
Yes.
So for today's episode, I'm really excited because I know in earlier ones we've heard a little bit about my story and my health, and today I would like for us to have a chat about yours, because you have epilepsy, and it's definitely been a big part of your life, definitely well over the past 10 years, with some of the challenges you've gone through, and both the negatives and positives that have come out of it, and how it's definitely shaped you. And so, you know, with everything that's happened, like when did it all start, and how?
So it's actually been a little bit over 10 years.
Yeah, that's what I've read.
Because it started when I was 18.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm a little bit more than 10 years older than that.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Time has just flown by.
So, it was really interesting because, like, a lot of times for people who have epilepsy, it starts at birth or as a child, and oftentimes people can grow out of it. But for me, it started when I was 18. And something interesting about my case is that it started because the brain is continuing to develop as you age. I can't remember when it stops aging, but it might be around 18 or 20 or something like that.
It starts to go into a different
Forgive my facts.
That's okay.
And so it was basically like a hormone was put out into my body because I was 18 and I was becoming a lady.
A lovely lady.
So what happened was I went off to Bible school.
Yeah, that's right.
Or what we call it, bridal school.
Bridal college. Did you get your ring from before spring?
No. I got to admit though, like most places I went as a single lady.
Single.
I was always like, okay, my husband's gonna be here. Where is he? But you weren't in Saskatchewan.
No.
Not at the time.
Not at the time, yeah.
So anyways, I went to this leadership school, and during orientation, all of a sudden, the person who was leading this orientation was like, does anybody have any questions? And all of a sudden, my hand was up in the air.
Oh, wow.
And I looked over and I'm like, how did that happen? And I pulled my hand back down, and she was like, do you have any questions? I was like, I just had like a blank face. I'm like, no. And so it was a little embarrassing, but I think I was able to hide it enough. And so I was in Saskatchewan, and just like weird stuff started to happen, and I was by myself because I was scared. And I was just like, okay, I need to go back to Winnipeg because this isn't right. And so this is going to sound real like weird, because like for everybody, seizures are different. And for me, it wasn't the classic like seizure that most people think of, where you fall over and fall to the ground and shake. For me, I didn't know at the time, but it was actually what's called a partial seizure.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't lose complete consciousness, but I would like have a blank face. I would turn pale. I would start breathing heavy, and then I think I would mumble sometimes, and my hand would go to my face, and then I would come back to and have no idea that anything had just happened.
Okay.
And I think the worst day was that this was happening every 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so my parents were like, okay, well, let this like see if this clears up in a couple days, but it didn't. And so we went to the doctor, and the doctor sent me to have what's called an EEG. So I don't remember. It's like something electronic, something graphing, something.
Yeah.
I've had my fair share, but I should know that. But anyway, so I had the EEG, and we went to the car, and straight away I got called by the neurologist and was like, you need to come in right now.
Wow. That's the one like where they put the things in your head.
And
right.
EEG, they basically tape a bunch of wires to your scalp.
Yeah.
And then they put some gel into like there's like Yeah. Anyways, you can look it up.
Right.
And so, again, that's a EEG. And so I had a seizure, I guess, when I had this EEG, which lasted, I think, about an hour. That was how long the test was. And my seizures weren't, like, super long. And so I went to the neurologist, and he was like, you have epilepsy.
Okay, so that was when you were diagnosed.
And I was 18. It was the fall. And I was like, huh? Like, I actually didn't know what that was.
Fair enough, yeah.
And so, yeah. And so after that, I went through testings. I had a couple week-long EEGs with like a video camera on me 24/7. So that was kind of freaky. And then they didn't know what to do with me. So they sent me off to Montreal to McGill University Neuro Hospital.
Right, because that's like the top in Canada, right?
Yeah, it's definitely one of them. And so I had another EEG while I was like admitted into the hospital. And I was expecting it to be like a week long like the other ones had been. But I think I ended up being there for over 3 weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I got to say, when you're in the hospital for 3 weeks and you can't, like, I was able to, like, have, like, I think 2 breaks a day of, like, going for, like, a 10-minute walk around the hospital. You go kind of bonkers. And so from then, they were able to find out, okay, this is where the seizures are coming from. Approximately, but let's do another test in the summer of 2012. Yes.
Right, okay.
2012. And so they did something even more freaky.
Oh, right. I remember now.
So the person who was my neurosurgeon had actually invented this test.
Oh, wow.
And so they stuck... Pardon, like, I'm sorry if you're, like, squirmy about this, but so if you get squirmy about medical things and surgeries and stuff, you might want to just fast forward a few seconds. So they stuck probes inside my head, inside my brain, because my seizures weren't coming from, like, the surface of my brain. They were a little bit further deeper in.
Okay.
So they wanted to find out, like, exactly where these seizures are coming from, in case, like, you know, they could possibly make a resection. That's what it's called, right? When they take it out. So taking out a little piece that possibly was making these seizures happen. And so thankfully they were able to find a spot of where these seizures are coming from. And so 2013, I went back and I had my first brain surgery. I mean, in 2012, I had, I had long hair, like, past my shoulders.
Yeah.
And,
So now this goes into my next question, right? Because it's like you would have obviously had to cut your hair to prepare yourself for it. So now, you started to talk about like how it all started, and then there's investigation into what was going on. You're now starting to enter another chapter of surgeries, and so what are some of the challenges you've had to overcome with epilepsy?
So firstly, as a woman, I think maybe some men too who have long hair or take pride in their hair. For women, most women, hair is part of what your identification is, of where you find your self-confidence. And so prior to the surgery, I think it was like the day before I left to go to Montreal, I was like, okay, I'm going to get my hair cut into like a short haircut, but like look so fashionable, because then I can know like this is what I can grow my hair to and rock it.
Wow.
So I got my hair cut and I looked pretty dang cool.
Yeah, you did.
And then I guess a day or two later, I was in Montreal, and it was the morning of the surgery. And me, oh my, firstly, I was nervous about the surgery. But secondly, like, I think it was a little bit ridiculous now thinking back. But I actually, like, pardon my language, but I was pissed.
Right. Well, for sure. It's a big change.
I had this orderly, I guess it was, come, and he took razor to my head and buzz cut all my hair off at the hospital. And I was sitting there with this, like, angry face on, I think.
Right.
And they're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yes."
What do you think?
I'm like, I'm just accepting this, this
kidding.
new thing of not having my long hair that I pride myself in, because, you know,
right.
I was one to go get my hair done and, like, colored and cut all the time. And so that was, I think, the first thing. And then going into the surgery, I'm going to take a couple steps back. Something that through all of these trials and tribulations of, like, I've got to go to this test. I've got to stay in the hospital.
Yeah.
I've got to, like, do this. I got to get this done. It was, I just, like, okay, so there's a song that for those of you who have been in the church for a while, I think it is by this woman named Twila or something. I don't know. Anyways, so it goes, "Joy of the Lord, joy of the Lord, joy of the Lord is my strength."
Come on, girl, sing it.
So
well, one more time. I think people need to hear that one more time. Come on, do it.
So, and then
one more time.
I think it goes, "I will fear no evil." Something about that.
Yeah.
And so that, like, the joy of the Lord is my strength was just a line that would, like, go. It was honestly, I think God gave me that line to hold on to choose joy, choose joy over this sorrow, because, like, in Nehemiah 8, verse 10, which is where this line comes from, I believe it was Nehemiah. There was a few people, but the Israelites, okay, this is what I remember. The Israelites had just come out of this really difficult time.
Right.
And so they gathered in together, and they got together, and they were, like, praising God, and they were saying, "Amen." Yeah, praising God. But then the book of the law came out, and he started reading out the laws. And for those of you who have read the rules to, like, things where you're like, "Oh shoot, I gotta change my whole life."
Yeah.
It's like,
these COVID rules are so easy to follow. Like, oh my gosh, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, but
for us in Manitoba, it's like, oh shoot, you cannot have anybody over to your house.
Right.
All of the stores can only sell this and that.
The hardest restrictions in all of Canada.
But anyways, so back to the Nehemiah 8. So the Israelites were hearing all of this, and they were just, like, started weeping in sorrow.
Yeah, they did.
And Nehemiah says to them, "No, like, the joy of the Lord is your strength. You should be, like, joyous because you're hearing God's words." And so they were like, okay. And so they held on to the joy of the Lord, and they went and they partied and ate sweets and, like, had a good time. And so that's something that, like, I chose, okay, I know that the joy of the Lord is my strength. I know that I can hold on to the joy that God gives me, because God is always with me, and I can hold on to that and stick with that to keep me going. Because when you're going through, I gotta tell you, when you're going through all that testing, the unknowns, and, like, just, like, I could be going into this surgery. I could lose my memory. I can lose speech with, like, the places that they were going.
Because it's such a risk, right? To have to go in and remove, like, parts of the brain.
And there's so many other factors that could happen with brain surgeries. But I remember, like, walking. My mom and I who would go to Montreal together. Sometimes I had like my dad or my brother came with me once. But I had my mom with me, and we were staying at this cute little nunnery across the street from the hospital, and it was like a hostel almost.
Okay.
And they,
Right.
yeah. So then we would walk across the street and go up this big hill up to the neuro hospital. And it was early in the morning, like 5 or 6 or something like that. And I was just so nervous. But I just remember, like, I had my suitcase rolling behind me. I was pulling it up, and I just was repeating over and over in my head, the joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord is my strength. This is what I'm holding on to. This is what's keeping me strong. And that's something that I just like was repeating to myself, because just like we mentioned in our last podcast, forgiveness is an action. It's a choice.
Totally is.
And joy is not only an emotion, it's a choice.
Right.
I'm going to choose to be joyful. And just like the Israelites, they were sad, they were weeping, but then they're like, okay, let's change our attitude, and we're going to hold on to that joy. And so I chose, okay, I'm not going to have this like, yes, I did have my sadness. I did have my mourning. I did have times of anger, but I chose at this time, I said, I'm going to hold on to this joy, and the Lord, he is with me, and he's going to be in that hospital room or the surgery, the operating room.
Yeah.
And so I held on to that, and going into the surgery, I just had a worshiper's heart. And I was just like in my spirit, I was singing worship songs to God, and just chose to like go in with that positive spirit and that trust in the Lord that I was going to make it out. I was going to make it out, and like just trusting in God that like this was going to make my seizures go away, because
that's amazing.
The seizures that I was having, like no matter how much medication I was on, I was still having like 15 to 20 seizures a day.
My goodness.
And with the EEG testing, it showed that I was actually having more seizure activity than I even knew. I wasn't feeling all of them. And so in this, like, I went in like just prayerfully trusting in God. I know that I had an army of people who cared and loved me, and even people who didn't know me praying for me.
Yeah, totally.
And for all the doctors and everything. And I just remember seeing a vision of like angels flying around the operating table. Ooh. And so
like you saw, like, when did you see that? Like, that's amazing.
I think it was maybe like when I was lying down there, like,
wow, that's powerful when you can feel the prayer and the love.
Yeah. And so like that was something that happened, and then I came out of the surgery, and it wasn't like I wasn't healed.
Yeah.
And I was still having seizures. And so this was something that I went through 2 more times. So I had in total 3 pieces of my brain taken out. And every time I chose to do the same. I chose to stand like strong in the joy of the Lord is my strength, and choosing that joy and to hold on to God, and because and just living out my life with that joy, and not allowing the enemy to bring me down.
So what's really amazing about this is that, you know, there was something challenging ahead of you, which was the surgery, and you chose that joy going into it. I'd be curious to know, like, you know, coming out of it, like, what did that joy and choosing that joy every day practically look like? Because choosing joy does not necessarily mean happiness. But, you know, what did that look like, whether that was in Montreal or even when you came back home?
What did the joy look like?
Yeah, like practically.
I would choose to do things with a positive attitude. I would choose to continue to praise God. I would still pray for that healing, but I would choose to continue to praise God, just like the Israelites. They were like, oh shoot, like this is not what we wanted, but they chose that joy and praising God and all of those things. And so like worship is something that's a big part of me, who I am, and like my place of serving God is by worshiping him, both in my alone time with God and leading others in worship in church.
So with worship, like, would you say that, like, worshiping at home, even if you were, like, lying in bed, when, let's say, like, you were on your own and, like, a discouragement came your way, or you wanted to feel down on yourself, for example, rightfully so, because this was, like, very challenging. Like, how did you still continue to push through that?
I most definitely had a lot of tears. I had a lot of, just like I said, I had a lot of anger. I had my times of depression, but God would remind me, like, I'm still here. I'm still here for you. And
wow, that's amazing.
And so I would turn back to that and would be reminded sometimes of from other people, or hearing from God. And so I was just reminded, and I would be like, okay, I'm going to choose to turn back. But like, for people who are going through difficult times, it's okay to have that anger or that sadness, that depression, but to know, like, to find a place to turn to almost, I don't know if the right word is to be rescued.
Right. No, I see what you mean. Yeah. Like, it's okay to feel the way in which you're going to feel, because you're going to feel those thoughts, right? And then figure out how to take those steps forward out of it.
But to have someone or somewhere to find that support in, like, I had friends and my family from church and outside of the church supporting me and just loving me, and I knew that I could go to people to talk to, and so for those of you who are going through those times, like, I pray that you're able to find somebody to support you and to be able to turn to. Like, right now it's going to be over the phone or over virtual, like, but it's it's important to find that. And I think there's also a lot of helplines for people too during these times, as COVID is isolating a lot of people. So yeah, did I answer your question?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I just, as you were talking, I kind of just was prompted to just ask you more of that, because I just sensed that, like, many are probably just even, like, feeling isolation. It's certainly not getting easier with the darker days and and the winter, and even the holidays, coming up. And so it's just encouraging to just hear how, like, even like going into surgery and coming out of it, how are you able to rely on God, that people were there praying for you, supporting you, and that even when you were alone, you were able to, while it was challenging, still find hope in the midst of it and worship. Yeah. And one of the things I do love about you so much is, like, your gifting that God has just blessed you with, and being able to lead people in worship. And even when when you're singing in our home, I love it. I'm married to a worship leader, someone who has pastored in worship when we were up in Yellowknife. And so you're my favorite worship leader in the whole world.
Oh, wow.
I'm so lucky, right? Like, okay. So when you're in church and you're leading worship in front of, a live audience, in front of a congregation, you will sometimes still have a seizure, but you're not going to, fall over as you described. Like, the epilepsy doesn't look like that. So now, with me being married to you, like, I know you, and I can sometimes tell when you're having a seizure. But the interesting thing is that it might not be obvious to the entire congregation. It might just look like you're having, like, a spontaneous moment or taking a break. Like, you make it look very, very natural, or you'll just be like taking a breath, or sometimes the band will just continue and go. So, like, my question for you is, how do you manage your seizures? And well, at first, in two parts, right? Like, in a church, like you were part of a large church with, a couple thousand people in it. So, what would it look like in that setting, even like with managing your seizures before? Because in a smaller setting, you can, it might not be as obvious, but. Yeah.
Actually, like it's the same no matter
It's
what
the same
size.
in both. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So in any worship setting, in any band that I am part of, I'm only like singing, so I am not playing an instrument, because if I was playing an instrument, I think that would make it extra hard, but to cover up. But I always will let the worship team know, the band, to know like, hey, there's a possibility that I might have a seizure. This is what's going to happen. Like, you're not going to notice, but if you notice that I'm not singing when I usually should, like, just keep playing. Just do that,
Right.
that round again. Or I'll have one of my co-worship leaders just start the verse out, and then I might let them sing it.
Right.
But yeah, it's like I sometimes, like, when that, if that happens, I'll just like, go into a time of just, performing. No,
Well,
that's
this-
hard. That's not the right thing to say. I'll just go into like a posture of worship, which I already would be in.
Right, and you'll just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is I remember one time, I think when we were up in Yellowknife, the pastor came up and said, "Oh, I just love what Gayle did, like when she just paused and and the worship band just kept playing and then kept going." And I'm like, "Oh, like when she had a seizure?" And I'm like, what do you mean she had a seizure? I was just like, it just like looked so natural. So it actually like appeared as though like it was just like a moment of pause and reflection. But you were like, no, you were like totally like just there having a seizure, and then you came back to it.
Because like when I have seizures, also I don't know if we mentioned that I actually, unfortunately, am still having seizures.
Right. Yeah.
I've had 3 surgeries, and that wasn't able to cure it. I haven't gotten healing. I believe and I know that God can heal me, but it hasn't happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
Or will it happen in this lifetime? We don't know.
Yeah. It's important to definitely, like, regardless, we still keep praying and believing for it, right?
100%. But you never know God's plan.
Yeah.
We're not fortune tellers of like
yeah, exactly.
seeing in the globe.
No, yeah.
But okay, so when I'm leading worship or when I'm singing and I might have a seizure, my seizures are generally, nobody knows that I'm having them unless you really know me.
Dun, dun.
Like you and family members. Like before you, I would be leading worship and I would have a seizure, and my mom would always know.
Right. Yeah. Like
because she knows me so well.
Yeah.
And my dad probably as well, because I also have led worship with him, which is so sweet, father-daughter. But there was one time we were up in Yellowknife, and I was gonna sing "O Canada" with a friend at a really cool thing of the community called a Long John Jamboree.
Yeah, that's right. It was out on the frozen lake.
In -40.
-40. Oh my.
Celsius.
That's very, very Canadian.
That's very
God.
Canadian.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, we were practicing, and I just like paused and I was like, "Hey, sorry, can we start again? I just had a seizure." And she was like, "What?" She's like, "No, you didn't." I'm like, "Yeah, no, I had a seizure."
Right.
It was, and they last anywhere from like a split second to like 10.
Yeah.
Oh no, how long do they last? I'm not.
It can be like 5 seconds or 10 seconds, 15.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that just happened during practice, right? Because it didn't happen during the real thing.
No, I don't think
and
so.
It's like, and I'm always like, between us, like I'm always praying, for you and such. Because I remember one time you got asked to sing the national anthem.
Oh, good Lord.
At a military hockey game, I think.
It was military versus RCMP.
RCMP, and there was a couple of like actual retired NHL players that came up, and the premier of the Northwest Territories was there.
Like some head honcho chiefs
and
some communities.
from the communities, and I was like, that's amazing. And like while you're singing the national anthem, I was just, like, so praying nervous for you, but you like killed it. Like it was so good. And
another huge blessing that I'm so thankful to God for is that, like, if I already have thought of a few words or a line before the seizure starts, I'm able to get those words out. And so that's often a savor too when I'm leading worship or when I'm speaking. But like when we're talking together and like I know that I'm having a seizure and I'm like, hey, stop talking because I'm having a seizure.
We'll be going for a walk and you'll like grab my hand.
But so like I might squeeze your hand, or I'll just like put my finger up and be like, just wait a second.
And then I know.
So like I can't speak through it. Like otherwise it's just like
I remember on our honeymoon we had
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. We had gone to a show, and there ended up being more strobe lights than expected, and we tried to sit at the back, and
like I covered my eyes too, but the lights still like go through the blood in your hands. So it's like,
and so I got to experience you having your first grand mal seizure in the middle of the night. And I remember that being scary and such, but I just thank God like you haven't had a big one since then. But what's interesting is just before we got married, a couple weeks prior, I remember asking you and saying,
well, I did have a seizure not too long before.
Yeah, you had another one that year too.
Yeah, it was a good friend of ours, and I was over at their house, and we were just talking, and
you had a full-on seizure.
Yeah. And that friend was really scared, and I felt so bad because it's not like I know they're coming. It just like happens. But most of the times when I've had grand mals, they've been while I was sleeping.
And then this one, I remember it happened in the middle of the night, and just before, a couple weeks prior, I had asked you and said, okay, like how long how long into like an episode or of a seizure should I be worried? Like, at what point should I be calling like the paramedics or for medical assistance? And in the hotel room, there was like a medical button. And then I woke up to it. And then I remember you had said something like 8 to 12 minutes. You kind of gave me like a random number. And then...
And just for everybody else's sake, like generally speaking... If you see somebody having a seizure at 5 minutes,
you need to call,
or before, just before 5 minutes, you need to call an ambulance. Or if they've never had seizures before, like call pretty quick.
Right. Yeah. So this was like a personal question, and then you had said probably around like that time frame, and then I remember waking up to it, and then I grabbed my phone, I set the timer, and it was getting to the maximum of that time frame.
And I've got to say, I'm impressed that you. Like, is that like military or pilot reflex?
It could have been,
you pulled out your phone in that panic.
I've been married for 3 or 4 days. I was probably. Well, it could have been like reflexes of helping, and some of our first aid training we get. But I mean, what am I going to do? I'm just, But anyways, I had set the timer, but I remember coming near the end of it, and then I was just about, I remember I had the phone in my hand, and I was about to push that medical button, and then you started coming through, and then I put it down, and then it took you some time to eventually come to full understanding of where we were, but then it ended up really being like a non-issue of not needing to go to the hospital, but it was definitely
just exhausted after.
Definitely quite the experience for sure. And so it's I can't imagine like what you've had to go through with this. And so I mean, I think it's just made you so much stronger and such a remarkable woman. So thank you for being strong in the midst of all this, babe.
Thanks.
And my last question is you've given a lot of encouragement today, which has been good, but I just want to ask this question again in case something else comes to your heart is, what has been the lesson you've learned in all this, and how do you think like that can encourage others? Is there anything you'd want to like add with respect to that?
I think like there have been probably multiple things that I've learned, but one that comes to mind that actually I have to learn over and over again is patience. With like believing that God is going to heal me, because I've seen so many people healed of physical things, illnesses, or just like I know that God can and does heal people physically and emotionally in so many different ways. He has not done that for me yet. I've prayed and asked God, is there something that I'm doing? Is there something that I've done that I need to ask forgiveness for or stop doing? But there hasn't been something. Right. So why I have seizures, I don't know, other than the physical explanation of that I've received. And so patience. It's all in God's timing. If God is going to heal me here on this earth, I would be really thankful. But it may not be until I get to heaven that I am physically healed. And just having the patience to wait for God is a big thing, because I think there's so many things that people are waiting for, whether it be a healing, or whether it be a friendship, whether it be somebody to come and do something for you, or a financial thing, because that's something I think, especially right now, lots of people are struggling financially because like they need to pay the bills or something like that. And so it's having patience to figure those things out. And some of these things you can take actions for. But for me, I've taken all of the actions that I know are possible. I'm taking medication to be functional where I am today. I've had the surgeries, but no longer can I have any more because I need the brain that I have left.
As you were talking, it reminded me of, and thanks for that, like of a passage, and I'll read from John 9 verses 1-3. It's the story of where Jesus healed a man born blind. And it says, as Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. Rabbi, his disciples asked him, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents? And in verse 3, this is what's really important and what impacts me every time I read this. It was not because of his sins or his parents' sins. Jesus answered, this happened so the power of God could be seen in him. I'll say that one more time. Jesus says, this happened so that the power of God can be seen in him. And it's evident with everything that you've been through, babe, that God's power has been in and through you and has impacted many. And I think just as we close today, can you maybe sing that line again? The joy of the Lord is our strength.
Joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And there's so many more lines that are so good to that song.
Yeah.
But
thanks for that.
Yeah. I am so thankful that I've had a few people reach out to me, people that I don't even know who are struggling or have struggled with epilepsy. And something that I just have to add is that when I started with my epilepsy, I had no one to turn to who knew about epilepsy or had been going through this. And so if you or somebody you know is struggling with this and you are like, I need somebody, please private message us or comment on Facebook or Instagram or on YouTube or wherever we are. And I would love to connect with you and have a chat and support you.
Yeah. And so thank you so much for today and for sharing what you did in your heart. And we just want to thank you to our listeners and to our viewers for joining us today in our basement.
Thanks for joining us today in our basement.
Yeah, and before you go, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and share this content in your social media platforms. And we hope to see you next time in our basement.